Serrano Mitchell Worlds is back. I took a break thinking about doing other things, but there are just too many wonderful stories to be told. And I'm starting with the story of Johanna Kostka, or should I call it the adventures of Johanna Kostka. She was born in Germany, but has made Grenada home for over 35 years. This is her story in her own words.
When I was young, I was really adventurous, and it actually was on my second backpacking trip to the Caribbean that I discovered Grenada. So Grenada was one of the islands that I visited. Having arrived from Barbados, spent a little time there, took a plane over to St. Vincent, spent a little time there, took the mailboat to Bequia, spent a couple of weeks there, the mailboat down the Grenadines Islands to Union Island, spent a few days there. And then I was bent on going to Carriacou. And of course, I don't think there were flights in those days, so I had to go by boat, but there was no regular boat service. So I asked around and I was told, you need to go to the village of Ashton and go to such and such rum shop and ask for Captain Wilson, and he can help you. So that's what I did. I walked to Ashton and met Captain Wilson and said, I want to go to Carriacou. And he said, okay, tomorrow morning, bright and early, be at the pier. It costs you $10 EC, and we take you across to Carriacou on a sloop. So one of those little wooden boats built on the islands. But he said, first you have to go to the immigration officer. You need a stamp to leave Grenada, to leave Union Island, or the state of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay.
And so said, so done. But of course, it was too early for the immigration officer to be in any office. So I had to climb the hill in the village of Clifton, knock at his door and say, sir, immigration officer, could you give me a stamp to leave Union Island?
Are you serious?
He was a bit grumpy, having been woken up that early. But he did give me the stamp. And so I was able to meet Captain Wilson and his crew, I think about 3 or 4 other men and me on that sloop. And we sailed sure enough, we sailed across to Carriacou. And then he kind of took me by the hand and took me to the immigration office in Carriacou to get my entry stamp into Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And then I stayed in Carriacou for a few days. And then I decided, well, now I'm ready for the big island. And I got on one of the schooners. I think the Adelaide B it was. So they were like wooden sailboats.
Yeah, I grew up hearing about them. Yes.
Yeah, we had cargo like, I don't know, sheep and, all kind of stuff on board. And that took about 3.5 to 4 hours. And I think at the time it cost like $20 EC to go to Grenada. And so,
you have me just in awe here, and my jaw just keeps dropping every time you say something.
Well, in those days, things were cheap. And me being a backpacker and not having much money, I had to choose the cheapest ways of traveling.
You said you were a backpacker. Define backpacking for me. And because growing, you hear about backpacking, people going to Europe to backpack. I never heard of people coming to the Caribbean to backpack. Define it for me, and how does it work?
Okay, so in those days, all I booked was like a flight from Germany to the Caribbean and return, because you needed a return ticket to be able to let in by immigration. And so all I had was a backpack. I mean, not a little backpack, but a bigger one. Actually, I think I also had a sleeping bag inside there, and my little bit of money maybe in traveler's checks, because in those days we didn't have credit cards yet, we didn't have cell phones. So, and of course we had no internet to research where were you actually going, where were you going to stay. So it was really all a big adventure. not like today. It's easy.
I
You
know.
Google islands, you Google places, you can book online. There was nothing of that sort. So I just had the flight, and then I had to sort myself out when I got to a place. And you had to communicate with people and ask around, and that's how it went. And I choose the cheapest places to stay and the cheapest food to eat. And I can tell you, for the 4.5 months of that, my second trip to the Caribbean, which included Grenada, I mainly lived on rotis. And rotis in those days, they were also, I remember a roti being like $2 and $2.50, for a roti. And as you know, a roti is very filling.
Yes.
So that's how I survived, basically. And that's how I backpacked.
Where they said the second trip you visited Grenada, the first trip, where did you go?
Well, the first trip, really and truly, I wanted to go or I went to the United States because
Oh,
I have a godfather in California,
okay.
and I hadn't seen him since I was a baby. And he invited me, and I took a flight to New York and wasn't treated the way I expected to be treated. I had a visa, but they pulled me aside. They pulled me in an interrogation room, and they said, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I make my way across the United States and visit my godfather." And I had a letter, but in German, to invite me. And they kept asking, "Oh, do you want to work here?" I said, "No, not really. I should have enough money for a few months living on a shoestring, and then I'll be staying by my godfather." And then they kept asking, "You have a boyfriend here?" And I was almost gonna ask, "Well, are your men here that special that I should have a boyfriend here?" No, I don't have a boyfriend. I kept asking questions and questions. And then instead of the 6 month stay I had in my passport, they only gave me 3 months. And then I was sort of, let's put it this way, I was a bit pissed off by the reception I had. And then I said, "Well, it was October." I said, "At least let me go somewhere where it's warm before going to California." So I took Greyhound buses down to Florida, to
Mm-hmm.
Miami area and Miami Beach area. I said, "Well, that's different. I never liked the cold, and it was nice and warm and sunny." But
And you're from Germany?
well, yeah, that's why I hate the cold. And so, long story short, after a week or so, 10 days, I'm like, "Nah, that's not really what I'm looking for." And I went into a travel agent. So I said, "I want to go to the Caribbean." And she started like the Bahamas. I'm like, "Nah, the small islands. Cayman, no, small islands." So then she booked me a flight to St. Martin, to Antigua, I think Dominica, and Barbados. But just to cut the long story short, again, I never made it to Barbados and Dominica, but I did go to St. Martin, flying through a tropical storm, actually. And in St. Martin, I stayed probably 2 or 3 weeks. And it's now not related to Grenada, but the first night I was young and, looking for adventure and looking for a place to meet people and have a couple of drinks. And two guys walked down the street, and I was young and pretty, and they said, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Well, where's the action?" They said, "Come with us." And so we went bar hopping and got along like a house on fire. And they said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "Well, in the back street at Lucy's guest house." They said, "Oh, you can come and stay on the boat with us. We have a boat, and then we can sail to places." I'm like, "Wow, that sounds fantastic." So that night I went back to Lucy's guest house, checked out the following morning. They had told me be at the pier 9 o'clock. And I was there 9 o'clock, being German, and they were not there. And then about an hour later, they came rowing, rowing, rowing a little dinghy, and took me in, took my backpack, took me to the boat. So I expected sort of a yacht, a nice, shiny yacht. Well, it was a wooden boat built in Carriacou. So that's how where the
Okay, okay. The
big
name.
Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit
Yes.
Martinique started. So
Ah.
the boat was called Mermaid of Carriacou. It was built in Windward in Carriacou for the annual Carriacou Regatta. And
Ah.
so this guy, and believe it or not, his name being John Smith, he,
No way.
yes, 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 he bought it from the guy, the first owner, I think Linton Riggs or Linton de Riggs. So he bought it from him and then he sailed up and down the Caribbean. And
Okay.
so that's an American guy, John Smith. And then he had another guy on board, his name Kevin. I don't remember his last name. So I went on board, and then it turned out the boat had no engine, the boat had no toilet, the boat had no shower. So let me tell you how it worked.
Oh
So
Lord.
I was shown a bunk in the back of the boat.
Mhm.
Next to a bunk with cases of wine they had bought duty free in St. Martin to sell on other islands. So I had no light in my bunk bed. The two guys slept in the main cabin. They had light from a couple of solar panels they had. So let me tell you about the toilet situation.
I like you. I seriously like you.
So the toilet situation, so being on deck and being a wooden boat, you had to lift a wooden hatch and then climb down and squat on a bucket.
Mm.
It was a black bucket marked with a yellow paint spot and with a rope. So you squatted there and imagine like your head looking out on deck while
Uh-huh.
you're squatting, and right in front is the wheel to steer the boat. So that's where you had to do your business. When you
Joanna, you're
finished with
brave.
your
You're
business,
brave. You're
you had
brave.
to throw it overboard. You have the rope, and then you wash it out, kind of, and you throw it overboard
You are
to
brave.
like wash yourself.
Uh-huh.
Only salt water, only salt water. So washing hair, washing yourself, washing your clothes, only salt water. The only time we got fresh water is to cook, to drink water, and to brush teeth. Everything else. So in those days, I had very long hair down to my bottom. And, being out in sun and sea and salt, my natural hair color is brown. After 2 weeks, I had kind of blonde hair or a lot of blonde streaks from the sea, the salt, and the sand.
Oh my gosh.
So, and we didn't sail instantly because there was no wind. So you anchor in a bay and there is no wind and you have no engine. So you can't get out of the bay.
My
So we just
goodness.
hung out there, went ashore every day to the bars, met other people on boats or socializing on different boats. And then one morning I was still asleep, shouting, "Get up, we're going, we're going." So after a week. So we're going because the wind was blowing from the right
Okay,
direction.
okay, okay.
And then pulling up the sails and we're going. I said, "Where are we going?" All excited, seeing new islands. He said, "We're going to St. Bart's." It's St.
Oh, okay,
Bartholomew,
okay.
a French
Mm-hmm,
island. So in those
mm-hmm.
days, nobody knew St. Bart's. These days, it's the island of
It's
the
the
rich and the
island of
famous.
the rich and famous, yes.
Yeah. But me, that was the first time I had ever been on a sailboat. Very first time.
Okay.
And so we leave in the bay, we see three islands lined up at a distance. I said, "Which one is St. Bart's?" He says, "The one in the middle."
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then we sail and the boat goes left. After a while, the boat goes right. The boat goes left. The boat goes right. I had no idea. I'm like, I know he's a bit crazy. The island is straight ahead. Why does he go like he's going to the island on the left and then over the island on the right? I didn't say anything, luckily. But after a while, I caught on. And I learned that that is called tacking, of course. When you have a
Ah,
sailboat, it's not like a motorboat, you go straight ahead.
straight, yeah, you have
But
to
the
go with the wind,
sailboat,
right?
if you don't have an engine, you go with the wind, you're tacking
Hmm.
to catch the wind. And so that's how we went, and that's how we got to St. Bart's. We were there for a few days. We sailed to Nevis. That's where he sold the wine. We hung out there for a couple of weeks, and then we sailed back to St. Martin. So
My
that was
gosh, that is fun. Scary, but fun. What did your
my
parents
first
say? What did your
sailing
parents say?
experience,
What did
you
your
know. And
parents say when you wanted to go backpacking to the Caribbean?
well, let me tell you, my first backpacking trip was actually to Australia.
Oh, okay.
And that was in 1979.
Okay.
I had a car before, and I was in an accident, and the car was a total write-off. I was okay. I just had minor injuries, but the car was a write-off. So I got the money from the insurance, and I'm like, I don't really need a car, but I had just come out of a 7-year relationship, and I said, let me go as far from that as possible. And they had very cheap flights to Australia. And I'm like, okay, I'm going. Again, all I did is book return flight. And so I used to live in a different city from my parents because I
Oh,
was
okay,
at
okay.
university studying languages.
Okay.
And I used to go home Christmas and then during summer holidays and so on. So that year I went home in November.
Hmm.
And my mother, being my mother, she said, why are you coming here now in November? Does that mean you're not coming for Christmas? I said, yep, I'm flying to Australia. Really? My mother, like in tears. And I was like 27. She said, who you going with? I said, alone. She said, oh, if it's a boyfriend, you can tell us. It's no problem. I said, no, it's me alone. They would have preferred a boyfriend to go with me. But I
Yeah,
said, me alone.
protection.
It's like,
They think you have protection, yeah?
oh my, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They couldn't believe it, especially my mom. She was like devastated. I think
Wow.
did not normally drink alcohol, but I think that night she had half a bottle. You know, she,
You drove your mom
so
to drink. Oh my gosh, no. Uh,
so that was my first backpacking trip, and it was 4.5 months. And then, so when winter came around again, because I
you
used to
ran away
travel
from the
anyway,
winter.
I used to work as much as possible during summer,
Uh-huh.
and then winter came around and I was gone. So by that time they were sort of used to it. Because the first time, remember, I said I would visit my godfather,
Yes, yes,
who was
yes.
like, I think, a cousin of my mom's. So then okay, she's going to stay with the family. And then I went totally somewhere else. And then the second visit, that's I said, well, I wanted to go to South America, but never ended up in South America. But I did
Wow.
what I just described, Barbados and then Grenada eventually on the wooden boat, and then stayed here in Grenada. And in those days there were more backpackers. I don't think there are any more backpackers in Grenada today in
Okay.
these days, but there were other backpackers because I stayed on an old boat that used to sail between, I think, Grenada and Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
And that was alongside the yacht service, which
Mm-hmm.
is now Port Louis Marina. It had a different name then.
Okay.
And so the owner rented little cabins to anybody who wanted it for as
Mm-hmm.
cheap as $5 if you slept on the floor, and $10 if you shared a cabin, or $25 if you slept in the captain's cabin.
Okay.
And they had two lovely local ladies, Josephine, who up to this day works at the Coyaba, and
Okay.
another lovely lady by the name of Berlin. And they prepared breakfast, and anybody who wanted to, they prepared dinner. So there were people from like almost all over the world, young
Okay.
folks sort of my age. I remember from Canada, from the US, from the UK, other Germans, and we all had a ball because right next to it was like a place called Love Boat.
Yes, I
You
heard
probably,
about that.
yeah, you're probably too young to know
Yeah,
that,
I
but
heard about
there was
it.
a place It was right there in the yacht club, in the yacht service, and it was an outside disco. There was one little cover, but mainly outside. And
Mhm.
that was a place to go to on a Friday. And we were right there. So we
Ooh.
went to, and nearby was Mama's.
Yes, I
I don't
heard
know if
about
you,
mamas too. I
yeah,
heard about
Mama's
mamas.
Bar restaurant was just
Yeah.
a few steps away. So we had a rum punch there, and her rum punches were so strong. And that lasted us like all night
Oh
because the
man.
rum punches at the Love Boat, they were small and they were sweet and sticky. So we went to Mama's, had a rum punch, and then went to Love Boat. I think they charged $1 or so to get inside. And
Say
then
what?
all night at the Love Boat every Friday. That couldn't happen without us. And we went around the island, we took mini buses, we went to the beaches together, and so on and so on. So we had a blast. But the day came when I thought, well, I want to see more. I have to move on again. And there was a deep sea fishing tournament. It happens here in Grenada every January.
Hmm.
And so there were lots of boats from all over the Caribbean. And I wanted to go to Trinidad, even though a lot of people said, oh, don't go to Trinidad, there's crime, you won't like it. I said, well, I have to see for myself. And so I went to a deep sea fishing boat from Trinidad, and I said, would you all consider giving me a ride to Trinidad? And the senior man, it was one senior man who was the dad of a younger man and four or so other young men. He said, yeah, okay. But if you get seasick, we tie you down to the back of the boat and you can vomit overboard. So,
Excuse you? Was that a deterrent? Was it a deterrent?
no, no,
It was for
no.
real? It was for
By
real?
now
Would they
you
do
should
that?
know me. By
No,
now
no.
you should know.
I'm asking, was it a deterrent by him to keep you from going to Trinidad or
No, no, no. I said, no, don't worry. I'll be okay. And so the following morning, he said, you have to be on the docks by the latest 6 o'clock. So I went. The guys were still sleeping because they had partied the night before. They were drunk. They were down below. And just the senior man, he was on top, and I sat next to him. And unbeknown to him, I had like, there's a chewing gum with something inside that's like a seasickness tablet,
oh, okay, okay.
but it's like you chewing gum.
Hmm.
So I said, well, I'm determined. I'm not getting seasick. I'm chewing my gums. And I didn't, but the sea was very rough. And believe it or
Wow.
not, it took us 9 hours to Trinidad.
Okay.
9 hours. And eventually the young guys got up a few hours later and we got to Trinidad. And, I didn't have to pay or anything. They shared their food and
Cool.
drink with me. And
Cool.
then I got there and then I was in Trinidad for a little while. Then I took the ferry to Tobago. And then there was no boat option from Tobago back to Grenada, so I had to book a flight. So I took a flight, came back to Grenada, went back to my lovely boat in the yacht service, met people again. And then there was an English guy. He was probably 20 years older than most of us.
Hmm.
And he had to deliver a yacht, a proper yacht this time, to the Virgin Islands. And
Okay.
he said, well, you want to come along? So I went along. So this English guy, myself, another young English guy, a young Swedish guy whom they had called Mr. Rum Punch because he loved his rum punch so much, and a young Brazilian guy. So
Oh
these
my
four
goodness.
guys. And so we sailed up the islands and it was beautiful. We just shared expenses, any
This
fees,
is so
port
cool.
fees, custom fees and food and drink we shared. And
That
then we
is
went to
cool.
Caribou, we went to Union Island, we stopped at Mairo, Canoan, the Tobago Keys, we stopped even in Mustique. We stopped in Mustique, we went to famous Bazin's Bar, and then to St. Vincent. And
Wow.
then I had enough. I left the boat in St. Vincent, stayed another, I think, 6 weeks until my money was done. And I always stayed as long as my money lasted. And then I
Okay.
had open tickets to go back to Germany, and then I booked my return flight. So that was the second Grenada trip.
So
And
how come how did you what made you stay in Grenada?
Yeah, that was on the third trip. That time I didn't want to go anywhere else. I wanted to go to the Caribbean. So I
Okay.
started in Barbados again, and the same way across to St. Vincent down to the islands. And I came to Grenada and met a guy
Ooh.
on the beach. So a
Ooh.
Rastaman on the beach, very
Ooh.
exotic for a young woman from Germany. And actually, it turns out he was on my flight from Germany. I had
Okay.
seen him with another German woman.
Ooh.
And so I met him here. And so, yes, I fell in love and didn't go
Ooh.
anywhere else, stayed here. And then, money done, I had to go back. And so then, of course, I went to Germany and I missed it badly. And
Oh.
but remember, we could write letters, but
Yes.
no
Took too
cell
long.
phone,
Yeah.
no WhatsApp call, no Skype call, whatever.
Yes.
So so then I said, well, you should come and see how I live. You should come and visit me. And so said, so done. He came to Germany for about 2.5 months. And now, him being a Caribbean man, he instantly, almost as soon as he met me, oh, I want a child from you. I was like, I don't think I want any children. I love my independence. I love my freedom. I love to travel. And he's like, no, no, it'll be a beautiful child. And I'm like, I don't think so. But anyway, then I thought, okay, well, maybe if I live in Grenada,
Mm-hmm.
it is much easier to bring up a child than bringing up a child in Germany.
Okay.
So I told him, because he had played with the idea of living in Germany. I said, no, 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 no. I don't want to live in Germany. I'll come and live in Grenada. And so when he came to Germany, we already started trying for a baby.
Oh. Ooh.
And we tried very hard, I can
Oh la
tell you.
la.
But nothing happened. So he left after 2.5 months. And then I sort of sold all my stuff and packed my stuff and left stuff at my parents' house and was ready to come here, and
Wow.
without the intention of going back. But that I haven't told my parents.
Oh
They
no, you want
thought
to
it
drive your
was
mother
just
to drink some
another,
more. You know,
they
driven your
just
mother to
thought it
drink
was,
some more.
they thought it's just another 4 or 5 months trip to the Caribbean. They were used to it by then. And so I came here, and what should I tell you? I think the first or the second night, Boopsie Kai are pregnant.
You
It's a
had to
fertile
come
plant.
home. You had to come to the island.
So, so that's how it worked. And so 9 months later, the baby was there. But let me tell you just about my first accommodation,
Okay.
because my man had another family in a village here in Grenada. So
Were
yeah,
you
he
okay
had
with
a
that?
few
Were you
children.
okay with that?
He
Were you?
had a few children. Well, I was jealous in the beginning,
Uh-huh.
but after my child was born, I'm like, okay. And she was okay, because she already had, by that time, she had 8 children. She was probably, okay, I had enough. Let him go to her. And plus, by that time, before my daughter was born, he already had a daughter with that German woman I saw him on the plane with. So that child is
Okay.
probably half year older or so than my daughter. But they're all brothers and sisters.
Okay,
They're
that's
one.
nice.
They're not half brother, half sister. They're all one love. They all
That's nice.
communicate. They're connected on
That's
Facebook.
wonderful. That's
Yeah. So
wonderful.
we're all friends. We're all good.
That's so
So,
nice.
but my first accommodation was in Belmont,
Mm-hmm.
sort of near Lagoon Road, and it was a house high on stilts,
Mm-hmm.
2 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
One was the bedroom, So the bedroom consisted of a bed, and I always say a Caribbean closet. You know what that is? It's a string from one end of the house
Yes, yes.
into the other, and all your clothes go over it. So
Yeah.
that was all that was in the bedroom. And then the front room, there was one table, two chairs, a two-burner cooker, I think two plates, two cups, two forks, two knives, and so on and so on. You get my drift. But no cupboard to put anything. You had to leave it on the table.
But were you
And
happy? Were you happy? That's a question I want to ask you.
I was deeply in love at that point, especially like from, and I was never morning sick, during my pregnancy. I
Mhm.
felt a bit woozy, but I was never sick. And then probably after 3 months, I was extremely happy. I was deeply in love. I was just, the nights he did not spend with me, he went to the other family. I was sad, but
Mhm.
I was really happy in those days. But, and I was flexible. I could live with it. I even got kind of used to the rats. So
I really like you, man. You are cool. You are adventurous. I love this.
So we had bought, I remember in particular, a bag of flour.
Uh-huh.
And as there
Oh
was
boy.
no cupboard, we had rested on the floor
Oh boy.
to make bakes and stuff. So the flour was there. So one morning I got up and I see the bag of flour on the ground and I see a big hole in it. And I, what the hell is that? Oh, how's this big hole getting in this bag of flour? So when he came home, I said, what happened there? He said, oh, it must be rats. Just like, oh, that must be
Anything.
rats.
Okay. Okay.
So I bought like a tupper, a big tupper,
Yes. Yeah.
plastic,
Uh-huh.
to put the flour inside. I said,
Okay.
rats, you're not taking my flour again because I didn't have much money. So you're not taking my flour again. So put it
Uh-huh.
in there. And then one night I wake up, like in the middle of the night, I hear ta 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 ta. I say, what the hell is that? So I got up, I switch on the light. I see rat rushing off. Rat had eaten the plastic of the tupper and still got to the flour.
Oh my lord. Whoa. That rat was determined.
So I can't remember what we did. Probably we hung up the flour. And the same I learned with the ants, how to batter ants,
Oh my
because you make a
gosh.
moat. You take a bigger container, you put water in it, and then you put
Mhm.
the smaller container so ants can't get into it. That's still up to date. How I leave the dry food for my cat. I
Mhm.
put a bigger container, I put the
Okay.
smaller container, I put the water because the ants like cat food as well.
Yes,
But then I
yes.
found out how the rats got into the house because the type of house it had no ceiling, but the
Mm.
galvanized was leaning on the wall. And one evening, I was just standing in the door frame and there was the electricity line from the pole to the house. And I saw the rats running along the line under the
Okay.
roof, and they were playing hide and seek around the top of the
Ah.
house I was in. And then, of course, the house itself had no toilet and no shower. So I had to go outside. There was a latrine,
Mhm.
and then there was an open air shower. I didn't fancy the latrine so much, especially the more pregnant I got, the more I
Yes.
had to pee all kind of
Yeah.
hours, also in the middle of the night. Come rain, come shine, I had to go with an umbrella if necessary. But I love the open air shower. Three little walls and the shower curtain, and you look up at the blue sky and a little lizard watching me every time I have a shower. I love the open air shower, but I didn't fancy the latrine.
Okay, so I know you're an adventurous, independent person who basically wouldn't care what others would say, but this is Grenada. Were you hearing little things being said or here or there or so?
I didn't in the beginning because I didn't know anybody.
Okay.
I was living like in a bubble. Um, and then, like, when my daughter was born, we already had moved to a bigger house. And to be able to finance the rent, I actually, the house had three little bedrooms, proper toilet and shower. I had like all friends who wanted to come and visit. I said, you can come, but you pay 10 US dollars a night and you can stay with us. And they had no problem because there was nowhere else to stay for that money. And they're
Okay.
staying with us. We had a nice view. And there was a Rastaman who is exotic to anybody. And he took them along in the bush and what have you, you know. So that's how we survived actually. But no, I didn't hear. But you know, um, only recently, very recently, maybe a month or two ago, like my daughter disclosed that people said, like when she was a young child, people apparently said, like this child looked like she have no owner.
Oh my gosh, that
And
sounds
it
like
hit
us.
me very hard. I'm like, you know, I know I'm not the perfect mother and I always had to work and I was always under stress. I had to make money because nobody helping me. I didn't come with big set of money, you know. And it really hurt me because I know I had a lot of hand-me-down clothes and so on, you know. An aunt in Germany, she sewed some clothes and she sent them. So, you know, because I never gave it some thought. It's not like that she was dirty. Actually, I had to wash all clothes by hand. There was no washing machines. Even in the beginning, when she was a baby, I had to wash diapers. I did not have money for Pampers. So I had cloth diapers and I had a special pot on the fire every night. I put in all the diapers and boiled them and then hung them up, and the next morning they were dry. And the problem was, though, that where we lived on top of a hill in dry season, there was no water. So then sometimes I had to throw the odd cloth diaper because I couldn't wash it. I had no water to wash. But he used to go down to the bottom of the hill. The bottom of the hill had water, and he used to come back like with two buckets and maybe another container on his head. He used to come back and bring water for me. So
I know you said you were in love and everything, and I loved your ability to just make it work. I respect that. Did you ever dream of having a life like this, or did you hate it at any point? You know?
no, I didn't. Um, I mean, once the child was born, we didn't get on so well anymore
Uh-oh.
because I had like immigration problems. And so I said to him, if we got married, then that would solve that problem
Mm-hmm,
with immigration. And he said, no, that was before my daughter was born. Sorry, that was
mm-hmm.
before she was born. And after she was born, sort of my love turned a bit against him.
Oh.
And then he said, after a while, let's get married. And I'm like, no, I don't want to get married. And I sorted myself out and took my baby to the then Minister of Tourism, the Honorable George Buzan.
Uh-huh.
And I went to him and I sat outside his office. It was in Archibald's Avenue at the time, and waited until he got here. I made an appointment. I waited until he got here. The baby pamper was soiled already until he came. And I said, look, I think I can do good for Grenada. I'm very dedicated. And, you know, I just need a longer stay. But I can be beneficial. I can do tours in German. And so he actually almost immediately called the then Minister of Labor, Francis Alexis, and said, look, let's give her an extension. He sent me to immigration and I got a 3 months extension. And then I applied for a self-employed work.
I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you.
I um,
Yes.
but I've never looked back and have worked in Grenada tourism ever since for 30, 5 years or something.
What was his profession? What was her father's profession?
Well, he's selling corals on the beach.
Oh,
He
okay,
had a
okay.
boat. He was running water taxi.
Okay, okay.
And that's when sort of disaster struck
Mm-hmm.
because he got lost at sea
Oh.
when my daughter was 3 years old,
Mm-hmm.
with a few other men. He provided his boat service to dive for Lumby, and the others went down diving, and he waited in the boat for them to come back. And then they sold the Lumby in front of a nutmeg restaurant, and they would share whatever money they made. And in the off season, like I would organize tours with tourists. So we would take the baby and the boat, and we would go to a beach down where the Rex Hotel, the Royalton, is now. Before there were any hotels, and we used to cook oil down on the beach. And we made the people peel the breadfruit and cut the breadfruit, and we made them cut the kalaloo and grate the coconut and so on and so on, and they
Give
loved
them the
it.
experience. Yes.
They got the experience. But then
Yes.
one day, and I was a bit already employed with a tour company.
Mm-hmm.
I came back from an island tour driving a minibus on the Carinage, and some guys stopped me and said, they haven't come back yet. They normally come back 10, 11 in the morning, and they haven't come back yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the Coast Guard is searching, Coast Guard was searching for them, as far as I know, for 2 or 3 days, and they didn't find them. They didn't find the boat, they didn't find anybody or anything. I mean, that
Wow.
was devastating to
Yeah.
think what happened. Did they die sort of alive, like under the hot sun, not having anything to drink? Because the boats in those days, again, no cell phones, the boat didn't have radio, the boat didn't have a flare to attract anybody's attention.
Okay, okay.
And so that was that. So then, like, my parents and everybody in Germany thought, okay, she'll be coming back now, because they thought I was here solely because of him, but that wasn't
Okay.
true.
Okay.
After the third trip to the Caribbean, I had fallen in love with the Caribbean, the people and the
Okay.
climate and everything. So to me, like, no, this is home now, and this is where I'm going to stay, and this is where I want my daughter to grow up. It's beautiful here. She could go to the beach on her own after school, fresh air, no pollution, no concrete jungle. Yes, I had next to no money in the beginning, but hey, we made do, and I worked 2 and 3 jobs sometimes at a time. But, um, you know, I think my daughter that way grew up pretty independent and with a lot of self-determination. But no, I never hated it. I never to say I want to go back to Germany. Never, never. And now more than ever, I'm happy to be here. Especially now with the pandemic, I said, what better place could I be than
Mm-hmm.
in Grenada? I mean, Grenada now has one case, but how long? Almost 2 months we had no case. And look at all the other countries around us, and in Germany and
Mm-hmm.
in England and the States. So I'm really happy to be here. This is where I live. This is where I'll die. And when the day comes, then I want cremation and scatter my ashes over the sea, or take my ashes on a hash trail and because I like
Oh my
hiking.
gosh.
And, then I'm a true daughter of the soil, which, I'm a citizen of Grenada by now. I have citizenship here.
I want to hug you. You are so admirable. You are independent. You are strong. You are um, resilient. You are wow.
But, I mean, there have been times when I got older, I got less adventurous. And I was
Yeah.
thinking of those days when I was really adventurous.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, let's say, after menopause, when women sort of get anxieties and so on and so on, and you have a business to run. So there were times when I was much less adventurous, and I said, where is this woman that did all that stuff without a second thought? But I have sort of come back to it, and I'm much more adventurous now than over the past, let's say, 15, 20 years.
So what are you
If
doing now that you didn't do in the 15 to 20 years?
Well, I'm retired now.
Okay.
So I used to run a tour company up to very recently,
What was the name of the tour company?
Sunsation Tours,
Okay, great.
for 31 years with a Grenadian business partner. But I just recently decided to retire
Mhm.
because I think I worked enough. And when I formed the company, I never wanted to be the boss of a company. I always say, I keep saying, I'd be 150% employee, but I'd be a bad boss because I'm not a person to work with a structure.
You want
As you know,
freedom. You want
I'm
freedom.
sort of a little chaotic and go by gut feelings instead of use my mind, and not like my daughter. She's very structured, but I'm not like this. I'm like more like, okay, laissez-faire, And so I decided to retire. I also have 2 holiday apartments, but I still
Nice.
have a mortgage to pay for another 7 years. But I love my being the host of the 2 apartments on Airbnb, and so I've started walking. You can see every day, and I feel like a tourist in my own country. And a lot of people see me in shorts and t-shirt and trainers and baseball cap every day, and people who don't really know me, they approach me and think I'm a tourist. But I walk every day, first of all, because I like exercise. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, I used to do tours and hikes as a tour guide, but
Uh-huh.
now I discover Grenada even more.
Okay.
Not just the landscapes and the views and the waterfalls, but also people. When I walk around in little places and villages and stop and buy a drink at a little rum shop, not an alcoholic drink, but something to
Okay.
drink. And so I love that. And I go with a little group on Wednesday, with a hash group on Saturdays, and at least 2, 3 times more during the week on my own. And if you look on my Facebook account, you see a lot of pictures, and they seem to be very popular, especially, excuse me, with people who are not in Grenada, who are either Grenadians or regular visitors to Grenada. They're, oh, thank you for posting all these lovely pictures. So that's what I do at the moment, but I have some plans for the future because I still need to have a small income because the
Mhm.
apartments
Yeah.
now during the pandemic, they just about maybe pay the mortgage. So the plan is to offer my services as a tour guide, freelance,
Okay.
without being employed, without having any responsibility.
You
But
bungled
I
down.
love
Yeah.
I love tour guiding. So it could be in German, it could be in English. So that's something I'm looking at maybe when things pick up a little bit.
Cool. What did people know of Grenada in Germany back in the day, like in the 1980s? What did you know about Grenada? What did your parents know about Grenada?
Oh, nothing, nothing. And they came here once, actually. They visited us once, I think in the 90s. They knew nothing. And now, from the earliest, I always used to do pictures and have slide presentations in Germany, also about Grenada. But I always took pictures of little colorful board houses, little wooden houses in pretty colors.
Mhm.
So that's what my parents saw, and beaches, of course, and waterfall. But when they came here, they're like, oh, but there are a lot of big houses. But
I
they
got
look
that from some French visitors when I was with them. They were like, the houses are so huge. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, but the big houses, they look boring, but the little pretty houses, the colorful houses, that's what I used to take pictures of. So, yeah,
When you had to come to the Caribbean, did you have to get what sort of immunization did you have to get? What sort of shots?
nothing, nothing.
And now if you have to come to the Caribbean or
Oh
anywhere,
God,
you have to get so many
yes,
shots, so many
yes.
shots.
Yes, no shots necessary. I mean, on my second trip, because I wanted to go to South America, I think I had cholera and yellow fever, but that's because I wanted to go on to South America.
Yeah, okay.
But I didn't need anything for the Caribbean, nothing at all. And up to now, visitors don't need any, well, except for Corona.
Thank you for viewing Serrano Mitchell Worlds. Please like, comment, and share. I am Serrano Mitchell. Have a great one.